Hey everyone, Mac here, and I just spent the last hour playing South of Midnight from Compulsion Games, and I am very pleasantly surprised. When Xbox initially invited me to try the game, I went in cautiously optimistic as I had played both of Compulsion's previous games, one of which was Contrast, which was a great indie darling, as well as We Happy Few, which had some kind of mixed criticism behind it. But this seemed like a highly ambitious project, which seems like a big step up for the studio, and I'm happy to say that it's paid off. Now, South of Midnight was originally announced in 2023, and it's a third-person action-adventure game set in the US Deep South. You play as Hazel, who is a weaver and possesses magical powers, and can use them to untangle her own family's past. The game launches on April 8th, 2025, and is available day one on Xbox Game Pass. Upon starting up the game, I was given 5 difficulty options, including Story, Healer, Weaver, and Grand Weaver, which just makes the enemies harder and harder during combat. And lastly, they had one called Custom Tapestry, which allows you to kind of mix and match different difficulties and make your own kind of personalized experience. During my preview, I did get to play through Chapter 3, and to save you from spoilers, I'll keep things pretty surface level. But it seems as though a hurricane washed away your house and you're trying to figure out your mother's past to some capacity. And immediately upon playing, I could tell a couple of things really stood out. First of all, the music. It is phenomenally well done and fits the vibe and atmosphere perfectly, which is the next thing I want to say is really well done. It does a great job of teleporting you to the location that the game takes place. The visuals are fantastic, both from like a fidelity standpoint as well as an artistic standpoint, and that includes the kind of stop motion effect where the characters move in a different frame rate from the rest of the world. There were sometimes some issues where the stop motion effect made it feel like the game was running at a poor frame rate, but you can actually turn the setting off if you find it too distracting, which is also very welcome. Another setting I actually found in the game options was the ability to completely skip through combat sections. I'll talk a little bit about the combat, and it can be a little bit challenging, but there is an option that it seems will allow you to basically skip through all of the combat and not really have to worry about that too much. It'll be interesting to see kind of what the point of the currency is to upgrade your character if you don't actually participate in the combat, but it was an option I saw in the menu. Now, my little playthrough here started with quite a bit of platforming, and the platforming was pretty basic, and as I was platforming, I noticed that there was a lot of little nooks and crannies and side paths that I was able to go and explore, and in a lot of these side paths, I found these kind of blue orbs. And as you approach them and interact with them, they give you a currency called floofs. And these floofs can be used in an upgrade tree to basically unlock different attacks or upgrade your 3 abilities, which you can see in the top left corner. Those 3 abilities are Weave, which kind of is like when a spider weaves a web. It's kind of like a way to freeze enemies or materialize objects as you're platforming. There's also a Push and a Pull, which can also be used during combat and through certain kind of platforming sections you'll come across. Additionally, in Chapter 3, you start with some of the basic movements, but as you play, you do unlock the ability to double jump, as well as the ability to glide and the ability to wall run. So it does seem like Chapter 3 was kind of the beginning of a lot of the new mechanics being introduced into the game. Maybe Chapter 1 and 2 are more story-focused. Additionally, Chapter 3 seems to have 7 readable collectibles out of 104 total in the game. You'll know I'll have you covered with the locations of those once the game is out. With the abilities and a little bit of the platforming comes some light puzzle solving as well. I found a couple of platforms that I could move, and when I moved them, I could reach certain areas I wouldn't be able to move before. I wouldn't necessarily call these puzzles, but it is interacting with the world during exploration in order to kind of, get some benefits out of it. So in a broad sense, they are puzzles. And then during my time with the game, the story did develop a little bit. I met up with the catfish who was stuck, and for most of the chapter, I was trying to get them unstuck. And in order to set them free without spoiling too much of the story, I was trying to find a bottle that I could fill with kind of spirit energy which I could use to clear the world of kind of the badness, the thorns that were in the trees, and the wounds of the past. And once I filled that bottle, I could use it to kind of restore nature to its previous self. Now, in general, I'm not much of a story guy, and they tend not to be deal breakers for me, but I actually found this one to be particularly interesting, albeit based a lot in kind of mythology and folklore. It took a really interesting approach to the subject matter and the way it approached it, and applied it to a place like a video game. I'm actually really interested to see how the story develops and then how that mythological folklore is put back into the game via mechanics and characters in the future. And I think that's going to be one of the main strengths of the game as well when you play it later this year. Last but not least, I wanted to talk a little bit about the combat, which I found a fun but challenging experience and a little bit frustrating at times as well, as you could get hit from behind from an enemy that you can't see, although you can use audio cues to dodge and get that timing right. I found sometimes I would get knocked down and the amount of time it would take for me to get up would just be a little bit too long, even though I wasn't taking damage or anything. It just kind of took me a little bit out of the experience. But once I was actually nailing the dodging, cycling through my abilities, which were on a timer, and once I learned the mechanics of how to heal and unravel enemies as I took them out, it became very rewarding. There seems to be maybe some dynamic difficulty scaling that might be happening as well, where the better you do, the harder the game gets. Don't quote me on that, that's just kind of the experience that I personally felt. Otherwise, I had a really great time, and I'm really looking forward to playing more of this game. My only other minor complaint is that while you're double jumping or while you're gliding, you can't actually use your abilities. I feel like it would have made for some smoother and more transitional platforming had you been able to kind of double jump and then weave during your jump. Maybe that's a mechanic that's unlocked later in the game, so who knows, only time will tell, but that's kind of something that immediately felt a little clunky to me. So kudos to Compulsion Games for making a game that should be on your radar for later this year. And that kind of concludes my thoughts on the game. I'm super excited to cover it in the future. I hope you enjoyed this preview. Let me know in the comments if you are excited for this game and if you'd like to see more preview content from me in the future. Thanks for watching. Drop a like, share the video with a friend. Special thanks to everyone on Patreon for supporting the show. Peace.